Hey everybody, welcome to another episode of Two Dads, One Car, where we talk about modern fatherhood. My friends, I am excited for this episode. I guess I'm excited a lot, but I am. This is gonna be our very first parenting, dare I say, expert. Yes, I know that there's a lot of different theories and books and articles about parenting, but truly, I am gonna bring on board Dr. Gordon Neufeld. He is the author of this book, Hold On to Your Kids. This is actually one of my favorite books of this year so far. It was written more than 20 years ago, but there's a revised edition about a new chapter on raising children in a post-pandemic digital world. And he introduces this fascinating concept about attachment. Kudos to my physiotherapist for recommending this. It's made a difference in his family's life. I can't wait to apply these principles. I'd love to dive deep into this and kind of learn from Gordon in this episode. And the great thing is that Gordon actually lives here in Vancouver. So we're currently in Kerrisdale. We're gonna meet up with him at a coffee shop, bring him into the car, and kind of dive into his concepts in this episode, in this podcast. And so with that, we'll be picking up very soon. I'll be seeing him in about 5 minutes. All right, cheers. Well, Gordon, I did a brief introduction to you earlier, but love to start off with how many kids you have. I also know you have grandchildren as well. So walk me through just a brief CV of your fatherhood and I guess grandfather profile.
Fatherhood started very young when I was 22, I think. I have 5 children. The oldest is 55, and the youngest is 33.
Wow.
And 7 grandkids. The oldest is 25, I believe, and the youngest just 2.5. We take care of her actually 2 days a week, so that keeps me really fresh in everything. I'm just absolutely enjoying it. In fact, I was just dropped off to meet you and said bye to Odessa because it was time to take her back to her parents. But no, it's been quite a journey. At one point, I had logged in how many cumulative fathering and grandfathering hours I had.
Yes.
It was quite impressive.
I can imagine being many, many thousands.
Yes. Yes. Well, they've grown me up. I'm sure. You know, this is the case for many of us. Is they've certainly been my greatest teacher and certainly stretched me to have to mature. I remember with my first child, Tamara, who followed me into this profession. She's a counselor and my right-hand person in the Neufeld Institute. Actually, she's the dean of the education, all our courses there. And so I remember that distinct feeling at her birth, like, oh boy, I'm going to have to grow up very quickly here. I don't have much time, you know, if I'm going to be the father she needs. And of course, that still is there. I still need to be the father she needs, and that is true for the rest of my children and grandchildren. Some people say, well, don't you ever retire? Well, it's not like that. You know, cascading care is cascading care. It's multi-generational, and to the degree that I can be the father my children require wherever they are in life and at that time. And I am absolutely convinced that I need to keep on serving them after I die. So it doesn't end when I die. As long as, you know, because attachment is a relationship, right? Yeah. It's not just being with, and it survives death. That's the beautiful thing about it, is your father is your father for better or for worse.
Yes.
You know, it can be very beneficial. It certainly was with my father. I feel tremendously the caring that he had, the invitation for me to exist, and a shame-free existence that I had under his fathering and his trust in me. So I live out my father's belief in me, though he's been dead, gosh, for 30 years.
That's so incredibly sad, and it talks about this notion of legacy and just how it carries through. And I feel like I know your answer for my next question, but I think one question I often start off with is, what is an unspoken truth about fatherhood? And it's something that is not as well known in the general literature and in common media and outside. And I think maybe those who are outside of not as familiar with your work as well, what is that unspoken truth that is not shared as much?
Well, what comes to me, especially given that you're a lawyer, and this may be a little bit charged,
Please, let's do it.
is that an unspoken truth, when we really look at it, is that the primary role of the father, in fact, of anyone outside, but certainly of the father, is to provide a child with a mother and all that that means. Now, you know why I'm saying this to a lawyer, because we live in a day where it's about fairness and it's about rights and it's about roles and it's about equal rights and gender rights. Now, when I say that a child needs a mother and needs a supporting cast to provide the child, or to provide the child with a mother, to deliver the mother to the child, and to matchmake the child to the mother could be the father. I'm not saying that. It is in the sense, when I'm attachment theorist, and from an attachment theory, it's that there's this primary attachment. A child has a whole hierarchy of attachments. I remember Braden, our youngest, when my wife and I were going out, and we say, "Well, are you okay, Braden?" And he started at the top. "Well, will Tamara be here? No. Well, will Tasha be here? No. Well, will Bria be here? No. Yes, she will be. Oh, okay." Because it went down all of this hierarchy, of who's going to take care of me, and so on. But the preference is, for the most part, the child will have a preference, and that will be their home. And it is really the responsibility of the rest of society, be the supporting cast, and the partner, the very first.
Yes.
And it doesn't matter what gender they are, and it doesn't matter what what the role is called in society. This is the first in the supporting cast.
Wow. Wow, I mean, that's so well said, and there's so many things to kind of dive into this. I, by the way, love your book. This was my favorite book of this year. My physical therapist recommended it, and I know you had a re-advised edition last year, and didn't know you wrote it 20 years ago. And I devoured it. I read it twice. I feel like every single page on my Kindle, I was highlighting and highlighting and highlighting. And that's when I know the book really hits. And so in this book, you talk about the attachment theory, right? Peer-oriented, parent-oriented. Love to get a synopsis of that so we could dive even deeper into that topic.
Well, that's the other hidden truth.
Please.
The other hidden truth, and the most important hidden truth, is it's not our relationship with the child, it's the child's relationship with us that creates the umbilical cord that allows us to get our care through. So we may be the most caring person in the world, but that's not enough. The child needs to be attached to that adult. When I was teaching at University of British Columbia,
Are you there now?
yes, we're on our way there. I had a course designed for me in my area of specialty, and they called it parent-child relations. And I said, no, it's child-parent relations. They said, no, that's not proper English. I said, never mind. It's child-parent relations that we're talking about, because that's the hidden truth. The hidden truth is, unless a child is attached to you. Let me tell you just a little story.
Please.
Odessa, our seventh granddaughter, who we're taking care of for 2 days a week, her father, my son, is a neuroscientist, and he and his partner are very busy professionals, and so it was part of their plan right from the very beginning that Nana and Papa, and I'm Papa, would be part of the care plan.
Yes.
So we were eager to do that. I love it. I absolutely love it. The problem is it occurred to Odessa when she was only a few months of age. Her favorite person in the world seemed to be Nana, my wife. And it struck her that I was the one who always took Nana away from her. So I became public enemy number one.
Oh, no!
She cried when she saw me. She would not look at me. I could not hold her without stressing her. In other words, I could not take care of her. Now, this is really ironic
Yes.
because I've written a book about, that's in 35 languages. It's been a bestseller in Canada. I have 5 kids, and she's my 7th grandchildren, and I am kneecapped by this little 3-month-old that is not attached to me. Now, her parents and my wife worked tremendously to matchmake me to her. It took a while, though.
Yes.
It took a while, and now I can take care of her. But that was the point. The point is we think it is our love for a child. We think it is our caring for a child. The hidden truth is the child must be attached to us for our care to come through, for us to be able to be the person they need, for us to be the parent they need. And that truly is a hidden truth. That's what the book is about. And it's why you need to hold on to your kids, is because it is their attachment to us. And they need us in adolescence more than ever. And so many say, well, isn't it over? No, it's not. Don't they need their peers more? Absolutely not. Their peers aren't going to go the distance unless it's a very deep friendship. Their peers weren't meant to take care of each other unless the family is a disaster.
Yes.
No, they need us more than ever, Well, don't we ever get to retire? Our fulfillment is in this. Why would you want to retire from something that is the fulfillment of our evolutionary destiny? There is huge fulfillment in this. It is to be the answer a child needs, no matter what their age, and in life and in death.
I'm smiling from left to right here because there's so much truth and power in what you're saying. Like there is a lot of, I'd say, discussion around, right, about peer orientation, right? And
Yes.
part of your book that just blew my mind is that right now our society encourages early peer orientation,
Yes,
right? Put
very
them to
early.
daycare right away, let them
Yes.
have play dates all day long, and really to
Yes.
detach from it. But part of the premise of your book talks about attachment. It's like, no, that's actually leading you down,
Yes.
And so as you've had your 5 children and your 7 grandchildren, have you seen nuances in this in your care? Like walk me through
Well,
that.
it's getting worse in the sense of not having this understanding. And part of it is that when you put a child into society, automatically everybody is concerned about the fit
Yeah.
fit in society.
Yeah.
That's the big question of socialization. And there's a confusion of language here because we think to socialize leads to socialization,
That's right.
right?
Yes.
There's a confusion of language, and so we get all confused and we say, well, they need to be around their peers. So you're getting children only in toddlerhood where parents are very concerned that they're getting enough exposure to their peers, that they have the social interaction with their peers because they become fit for society. Well, in actual fact, to the degree that they attach to their peers, they start talking like their peers, acting like their peers, and
Right.
it looks like they're more socially fit. However, they're not being, this is at the cost of healthy development, because attachment is not about, like it will get to social fit. That is the last piece of the finishing touch of development. But what is needed all along is a transmission system of care. And that is fundamental. And when a child attaches to a peer, the peer matters more than the parent. They want to be with the peer more. They want to be like the peer more than the parent. Now they're looking to their peers for the answers to belonging, to significance, to being known. And now they're set up to be hugely hurt and wounded. And so that's behind the crisis of mental health today. Our children are experiencing not feeling cared for and about, but they were never meant to be cared for by their peers. This is a vertical thing. This is an intergenerational thing. And for that, though, we need to be able to put the relationship first and foremost, and we need to preserve it and take care of it. In times past, culture did this. That's what culture's job is. Culture can't propagate itself except through relationship. Otherwise, there is no transmission system. And but we don't, we serve the dollar, not our culture or society serves a dollar not culture. We've lost our cultures. We've lost the rituals of connection. We have very few of them left, and so our children are deeply in trouble because they're experiencing, even though, and this is often said, well, we've had some of these suicides in Canada from peer wounding and so on, these dreadful things. And I could see it was from peer orientation, and then I would get a rebuttal from somebody who said, no, they had a parent who loved them, a mother who loved them, a father who loved them. I said, yes, they did, and that's the tragedy. The tragedy was the love was there, but it didn't get through because the teenager was looking to the peers for what could only truly come from those responsible for their care. And that's the tragedy of today, and it's getting worse, not better. I thought, I was slow to write. Oh, we're right by your
law school.
your law school where you teach. Yes. And we're getting near to the faculty club where I spend a good deal of my time there.
That's where I'm going intentionally.
The psychology department is right down this way. Yes, we're in home territory here. I lost my story.
But I think what you're saying is that there is this counter argument that says like, well, the parents love the child. Why is the suicide happening? But you are pinpointing the nuance here. It's not the parents' love to the child's perception backwards.
Exactly. And it's attachment to the parent, and that's the hidden truth of our society. We're losing our kids, and when we lose our kids, they lose our care. We can't get our care through.
The one thing that resonates with me is that one of my fears earlier, because I have a daughter, she's 3.5, early stages, but one of my original fears is that we actually don't send her to daycare because my in-laws are helping, my mom's helping.
For you.
So at first we were getting, my wife and I were getting some glances like, oh, why aren't you sending her to daycare? Like she's not going to socialize, like peer to peer.
You see, there's the fear.
And this is every time people ask like, oh, a daycare? Why aren't you doing daycare? Like, why aren't you doing? It's like there's this underlying tone. And I'm like, and I look to my wife, it's like, is this really going to be an issue? And we went with her gut, right? We're like, you know what? Like our parents raised us pretty well. I think it'll be just fine. And the funny thing is, she's one of the most social kids out there.
Absolutely. Absolutely. Jean-Jacques Rousseau was right. What was it, 1763? I forget when he wrote instructions for the raising of Emile. I think it was just called Emile, and he put some of it. But the idea that you need to become a separate person before you actually treat others as separate individuals. That's part of our problem today. But how do you become a separate individual? Well, how does a cell become separate? There first of all has to be the fulfilled fusion, the fulfilled attachment. First of all, the separation comes from satisfied connection, from satisfied fusion. In development, we have what we call the orthogenetic principle, that all life starts with seeking fusion attachment, and only if there is release and satisfaction does differentiation, individuation happen, and only when there's sufficient separation, literally at the cell level, neuron level, do they start the interaction between each other. So the interaction is the finishing touch, and that's true in biology, it's true in physics, it's true at every level of development. We are so concerned. Where there was a book written by one of the great developmentalists, Miseducation and Hurried Parenting.
Yes.
And the whole idea is we're so in a hurry to push our children into social integration. This is the last thing the brain will do in healthy development. First of all, there has to be satisfied attachments, and from that comes a sense of individuation, separation. Odessa now is filled with, I'll do it myself, I'll do it myself. Yeah. And from there, she begins to treat others as having a separate identities, separate boundaries, and so on. So it will come spontaneously if conditions are conducive. When you get in a hurry, what you do is you get social conformity at the expense of healthy attachments and individuation.
Yes, and you're kind of rolling the dice because it depends on who you're orienting around,
That's
right? And that's where there's so much in what you just said just clicks. you're kind of calling back my science background. We should be driving to the
yes,
science building in a bit, right? But as you're
That's
saying,
right.
as cells mature.
Yes, I took biology in this building coming up here.
For those watching the video, we're on the
And
campus at
chemistry.
UBC.
I actually graduated from UBC. I took my PhD from here too, so I'm in home territory.
Oh,
yes,
my.
for those who don't know. And then I came back here. I was telling Stephen, I came back here to teach sessionally in the psychology of department, in the psychology department for about 20 years. And I taught developmental psychology and parent-child relations and psychology of adjustment, all kinds of fun things like that. Yeah.
Do you think it's still parent-child relations? Have they changed it to child-parent?
Oh, I don't think they were ever going to change it.
If I can ask, a counterpoint, and I'm sure you've heard this question. Another book that's come out this year is, maybe late last year, is The Anxious Generation.
Yes.
Right? And
yes, by
in
Jonathan Haidt, yeah.
And I'm trying to figure out how to reconcile, because in that book, the book talks about technology. We'll leave that aside. But it also talked about self-directed play with peers.
Yes.
How do you reconcile that with peer-oriented?
Well,
and I think I know the answer.
Yeah, that's where he wasn't informed by attachment theory. That was missing in that book, because he would have recognized that the problem is not technology, it's the peer orientation that turns technology into instruments of connection with peers.
That's right.
And that is the thing that's so obvious when you see it, and he doesn't get that part. And that he doesn't root anxiety in separation alarm. That anxiety is rooted in alarm, and alarm, what alarms us is when we face separation, then is too much to bear. So these are fundamentals that weren't there, but he got an edge of the play thing. But what he didn't, he got an edge of it. And that, is good. And technology is mainly, or screenplay is mainly false play.
That's right.
But he made a mistake, like many do when they don't understand it, is they thought it was play with peers, because that's where you learn all the skills, and it isn't. And in fact, it isn't even physical play. Where what brings emotional health is emotional play, and this is the very essence of culture. When you look at what is called plays, drama, theater.
Yes.
Called play,
That's
right?
right.
That's how the Greeks called it, and for a reason. Why? Why did every Greek, why did every Athenian have to learn an instrument? It was not to become a musician. It was for emotional expression.
Oh, wow.
And play, music. Even Socrates. It is said when before he took his poison, and he regrets. He said, I wish I would have become a musician. And true, it would have kept him from, philosophy, which was play with ideas. But the whole point is that emotions had to play. Culture, that is our stories, that is our music, that is our theater, our play, our dress up. That is where emotions need to play. And when emotions play, we feel them a whole lot better, and we can feel where they come from. That's where we're most likely to realize when to link them properly, to feel them properly, and to know when there's really nothing left to do. We can't fix this problem emotionally. All there's left to do but have a bit of sadness about it. But we get it one step removed in plays, in poetry, in theater, in music. So the most important music actually is sad music. The most important music for a baby is a lullaby, because it opens up to that sadness that is required for humans to adapt and let go. Like, how is a baby supposed to let go of the agendas of the day, of being close to mommy? How is a toddler supposed to do this? Well, every single culture has, interesting enough, has invented the lullaby as the best instrument of this, because it invites, it's written in the key of sadness, it invites the melancholy. Words are unimportant, but it's only when the brain senses a bit of melancholy that it lets go of all of the agendas of the emotional operations, and it's the very essence of human adaptation. Well, That was a long answer,
No,
but it's
yeah.
all connected. You see, it's all connected in there, and that's a play that is missing an anxious generation. Doesn't get it at all. It is not about playgrounds. It is not about free play with peers. It's not even about free play. It's about emotional playgrounds, and this is where culture is important. But you can't transmit your culture without attachments. Your children need to be attached to you. Otherwise, they borrow the culture of their peers, and this does not serve the emotions. This only gets them wounded. And so the culture needs to be transmitted, and that also is a vertical transmission line.
This is like a master class right now. This is truly a master class. The fact that Gordon's sitting next to me, you travel around this world to speak, and you were speaking with Novak Djokovic as well.
Yes,
I was just
yes,
at Indian Wells watching him play tennis, and it just like blows my mind. The one, before I tangent there, the one question I have on that is that I'm sure another counterpoint is like, then how do we separate out parenting from like helicopter parenting? And I'm sure people ask you that. It's like, well, if we want to ensure the attachment, there's this concept of, oh, we don't want to be helicopter parents. How does that reconcile?
Well, that's a very unfortunate language. I think it was invented by the school system. Because often it feels like parents are interfering. If parents didn't care, children would be in trouble.
Yes.
Can parents care too much in the wrong way? Of course they can.
Yes.
Can we be overprotective of our children so we're not conveying to them that they can handle things? Yes, we can do this. Of course we can. Can we compete with others who are responsible for children's care? Yes, we can. We can make it very difficult for teachers, but we need to care, and when we care, we sometimes care too much and in the wrong ways, and so one should never be faulted for that. It's just, you know, but if we're afraid that the child can't handle something, and so we interfere in a way that conveys that they can handle something, we're crippling the child emotionally.
That's right. That's kind of like we're just driving through the village here. It's kind of like a tree in nature, right? If you don't allow it to be faced with some of the winds, it won't really grow its roots.
Absolutely.
But that's not to say that you absolutely ignore the tree or the organism. There's a lot that I'm just like thinking about as you're saying this, because, you know, in my childhood, I did play with my cousins a lot, right? And I love your book talks about cousins, actually a really good substitute.
Yes,
right?
Exactly. No, cousins are great. It's like planets are cousins, right?
Yes.
Because when you have an attachment in common, you're operating in the cousin modality.
Yeah.
You see, because that's why around the mother, grandfather, and the planets around the sun. And that's where they get along the most, when they all have an attachment in common that matters the most.
Yes.
An adult that they care of. And so that's the natural way. And now this can be emulated in a preschool, or even in elementary school, when the teacher, I remember a grade 5 teacher, oh my goodness, we all loved him.
Yes.
And we made of him a master teacher, and he was more important to us than anybody else. And they were bullies in the school that I went to. For the first time, we all got along because we weren't trying to get along. And because Mr. Peterson mattered more to us than anybody else. And so he could orchestrate our relationships, because, you know, just like if you think of a choir leader.
Yes.
Are the choir members looking at each other, or are they looking at the conductor? No, they're looking at the conductor. Same with the orchestra leader. Why? Well, because he's the one that matters most. But our attachments to him allow him to conduct us, allow her to conduct us. Now we get along. Now we harmonize, not because we're trying to harmonize. That's a problem with many of the social programs in school today, is they're focusing on the peer relationships, trying to get them to be nice to each other. And you know, then along comes Gabor Mate, my colleague, and says, well, that's your neuroses. That's why you're getting sick, you know, as adults, as you're trying to be nice. Is that, you know, that's when you get sick, when you can't, you know, the body is having to say no to you because you can't say no, right? And,
love that book too.
And so that's, so no, we should not be focusing on trying to get children to get along, to be nice to each other. We should be focusing on the child-parent relationship, the student-teacher relationship. When we do so, they automatically, they get along better when they don't matter so much to each other. They're not so wounded, and we can orchestrate them a whole lot better when they're attending to us rather than attending to each other.
Oh my gosh, I'm just like jaw dropping. I'm gonna like re-listen to this episode over and over again. I'd be curious to know how you've applied these principles with your grandchildren, because I know in the book you talked about it was like your second or third child. You're like, oh wait a second, something's happening here, right?
Yes.
And so,
Yeah,
and
yeah.
is this a
I took a while to get into
no,
this stuff, but I mean, you can't throw the first batch
course,
away,
of course not, right? But like,
Oh,
how do you
yeah.
apply it with your grandchildren? And is this like the mandatory reading for all your kids when they announce we are now pregnant? Here's your book.
Yeah, that is funny. That's actually what happened with two of our daughters. Anyway, you've got to take a course from my dad before to qualify. It can produce some tensions that way. Of course, it can do. But generally speaking, yes. It's certainly been something about wanting to live all of this out and having the chance to be involved in the care of our grandchildren, and a number of them, at least 5 of them, I think we've been able to be involved directly in the care when they were young.
Wow. And were there any, I mean, this is for the grandparents who are listening, who may be grandparents. How do you also navigate the tension between your style and maybe not necessarily your direct children, but maybe they're like spouses, and like, what does that look like? Because yeah.
Well, you don't have to harmonize it, even between partners. You don't have to harmonize your parenting. A child has a very different relationship with each one, and they very quickly get it.
True, actually.
But it is so important that the child has a taste of an invitation to exist in their presence that is not taken away. That is the most important. They have a taste of what it means, to matter, to be significant, and for nothing to come between. Even if I don't mean that they can be with. You can have a closer relationship with a grandchild, and you only see them once a month because of the invitation you exist that you give to them, that they feel safe with you. They carry that relationship with them wherever you are. So you can have a phenomenal impact on a child and be with them relatively little.
That's so true, because if I'm just reflecting about my own childhood too. There was definitely like even stronger, I guess, umbilical cord between myself and my aunt. And even though I only saw her once a year, like she was in California, and once a year.
Yes.
But the early formative years, she was in Vancouver, right? She went to school here, and I remember the early years, and she moved away, and I did feel pang of sadness. But every time I go see her, even to this day, like what she says, I
Yes.
listen to. My wife had listened to this, but I would like bet all like. I hope my ex-girlfriends are not listening to this, but I would vet all my long-term girlfriends with my aunt. And if she gives me the thumbs up or thumbs down,
Yes.
it meant like break up in the next few months.
Yes.
It was to that extent.
Yes.
But you're
well,
right.
you didn't want to risk that, right?
I didn't.
You didn't want to risk that relationship because it was so nurturing for you.
Yes.
And that's what grandparents need to know. Like, is there's a lot of things that you cannot do. You have no control over how your own children parent,
That's right.
unless they're asking you for advice, and very few do.
Yeah.
But you don't have control over it. But you can have a phenomenal impact with a child by giving them a taste of this kind of invitation, of a sense of significance, the twinkle in your eye, how you speak their name, what you mean to them, the fact that you remember them, they're on your radar, can nurture tremendously and fulfill that deep hunger for significance, to matter, to be loved.
If I could pivot the conversation, I mean, I'm just soaking this in. I think this is fantastic. If I could pivot the conversation on more on terms of like what to do. So, for example, I'm so blessed and grateful that I've read your book at this early stage. Right, my daughter's 3.5. Like I'm like, wow, like this is fantastic. But there are, of course, listeners who have kids who are heading into the preteen stage, right? Who are heading in this, and they may have started to feel they've lost that attachment, and they resort to, using more anger and force as a way to compel. But we know in your book that that's short term. It actually pushes the child away. If you're listening to this podcast right now and you want to speak to them, how would they start in that framework? If this is a listener who has two children they sense that, oh man, I'm losing the attachment. I don't have the attachment.
Well, we are creatures of relationship. We are creatures of attachment.
Yeah.
When we know that attachment is important, we know how to give a message that we care. We know how to invite somebody to depend upon us. We all have that ability. We just need to know it's important. Attachment is the oldest dance.
Yes.
In the universe. It is the oldest dance. If I want to go back to the hidden truth of it, right?
Please, yes.
The hidden truth is when we think we know we need to have the answers of how to do things, the actual fact is that we need to step up to be the answer. And we know intuitively how to do this. If I know that I need to be my granddaughter's answer, my daughter, my son's answer for significance, to matter, for belonging, this is something intuitively I need to do. I know how to do, no matter how damaged I've been in the past, and I underscore that. And that's another hidden truth. You don't have to get your act together before you parent. If you step up to be the answer the parent your child needs, it will grow you up, and you will find yourself recovering from some of your neuroses. It will stretch you. You don't have to. You don't have to grow up first, and that's the good news. But the danger is when we seek too much to figure out what to do, we lose the dance. And the child loses us because they don't need a technique.
Yeah.
They don't need us for us to do it correctly. They don't need us to be reading a manual.
Yeah.
And what they need is for us to show up and for us to bluff it if we have to get to the place where we commit ourselves to being the parent our child, our adolescent needs. Now, are there practical things? Yes. Put the relationship first and foremost. Don't you make that the bottom line. Be creative with everything else. If you can't figure out how to get your point across, how to be able to get something through their thick head, remember, and I would say the same thing to partners when I did marriage therapy. No, don't try to resolve a conflict to get to each other's side. Get to each other's side, get a sense of each other's hand that you're holding it. In that context of togetherness, now deal with your conflict, and you'll find you'll dance much differently. And that's the same with any child. Now they'll say, well, how do we deal with this conflict? Well, I'm not you, I'm not your partner, I'm not sure how, but you know how to get to each other's side. You struggle for that, and if it doesn't work today, have some tears about it, you'll find another way tomorrow. When you do this and you deal with your problems, your issues, your concerns inside the connection, you'll start dancing differently. And this is a dance we all need to discover in us. It's there to be discovered, and it's in every one of us.
Gordon, we just met today, and you're hitting all my heartstrings. Like, I also dance. I also play music, and all these analogies are just like
yes.
like fire right now. Because when you're dancing with a partner, it does require the adjustment. Like, what is their height? Like ballroom dancing, right?
Yes.
Height, what's the firmest, the tone, and there's an adjustment period.
Yes.
But once you got it, you got it. Like you're in the zone.
And you are, and togetherness is the issue of dancing, right? It is togetherness. Like if you don't have a connection, it's not going to work. It is the issue, and then you start moving and you adapt as you need to, but you start your movement within that context of togetherness.
And one of the practical takeaways I read from your book, and I think you talked about the example of like taking your kids for long road trips or taking them fishing or like camping as a forced means
Yes.
to break down that barrier.
Well, when your children are peer oriented,
That's right.
when
That's
their
right.
peers matter more, right? How in the world do you get some elbow room? How do you get some room to move? How do you present yourself as the answer when all they want to do is be with their peers, when they're bored with you, when they think you're nobody? And they can hardly wait to get back
Yeah.
home when home for them is with their peers. And sometimes you need to you need to bribe a little bit. You need to sweeten it a bit. Like, I'll
Yes.
take you to your favorite place in the earth, or we'll go see a movie that you really like, but you get in their face in a friendly way, and you start working from that place. Oh, in matchmaking, we're allowed to do some things that just sometimes that aren't just for the rules. But when you have the confidence, it's just like in courtship.
Yes.
When somehow you need to get in their face and communicate that you care, that you're the answer, and so that's the same with our children, and they need us to step forth in some kind of confidence, at least to look like we're confident.
This reminds me of a conversation I had with a past guest, Cal Newport, actually. He flew to DC to chat with them, and he talks about now, like as his boys are now much older, he feels that they need him even more, right? And there's that sense inside
Yes.
that maybe, oh, actually, I do need to spend more time with them. And there's an intuitive pull there that makes sense, right? Especially during these times. And it's just so much power in what you just said there, right? And I just also reflect back on my own upbringing, where my dad and I had a fractious relationship, like growing up. But it wasn't until like I was in law school, he was in Toronto, we were both adults, that we started amending things again, right? And although he passed shortly after my daughter was born, we ended things on such a positive, beautiful light. And so I think what you're saying earlier, that is not too late, right? Like
No,
it's
it's
never.
never too late. That's a beautiful thing about relationship. It's never too late. Now, the sad thing about relationship, or the tragic thing, is it does take two. You can't force it.
Yes.
You can't force it. You can invite, you can communicate you care. I would always say start with the very basic things. If you've lost your adolescent, if get their favorite food, let them know you're they're on your radar. Communicate in the very simple ways that you care. Keep from tripping over them if you can. Remember, it's relational work that you're doing, but it's walking a maze, and like any maze, you're walking it blind. You have to have a bit of sadness about something that didn't work, so that your brain doesn't keep on going in a repetitive pattern, doing the same thing over and over again that doesn't work. And so the sadness needs to be there. It's the only way the brain registers that, oh, this won't work, it's futile this way. Then the brain moves to become more creative. But sadness is absolutely necessary in the process of parenting. Because only sadness will keep us from repeating our same errors over and over again. Like many times, parents would say to me, "Well, I told my child 1,000 times not to do this," and I said, "Well, I don't know anything about your child yet, but I know a lot about you. That you're very stuck, because why would you ever do things more than 2 times in a row that didn't work? And I also know something else about you, that you're finding it very difficult to find your sadness about things when they do not work." Now, your child may be the same way. I'm guessing that your child is very much like you, is that both of you are finding difficulty finding some sadness about the things that do not work. And there's another hidden truth, by the
I
way.
love it.
It's not led cognitively. We're led, adaptation is a matter of the heart,
Yes.
not a matter of the head. We never adapt. We need to find some sadness. Gabber has a favorite quote, Mate, that my co-writer in the book, and now quite famous for his other books as well. But he says, Neufeld always says, no, we can only be saved through our tears or through a sea of sadness. And he's right. He's right. That is that. And happiness lies on the other side of sadness that we have not yet experienced. But parents need to be open to their sadness to really become the answer their children need.
My God, that's a mic drop moment. Because it reminds me of a recent episode I had with Jagmeet Singh, and he talks about how having children has really opened up his heartstrings, and he's felt more sadness and highs as well too, and myself as well. Before I turn to the very last question, I know you have a talk coming up in Vancouver. And
Yes.
depending on when you're listening to this, you may have missed it or you'll be there right in time. We have plenty of releases in April. Love for you to share the platform, give you a platform to kind of share what you're working on, ways that we can support you, including this event that's on April 25th.
Well, it's a fundraiser for the Neufeld Institute. The mission of the Neufeld Institute is to make sense of kids to the adults responsible for them, and I've created about 35 courses or so that are all available online. But this is one of these rare events. I don't do much presenting in my hometown anymore. This is one of those rare events where I'm presenting at the Bell Centre in Surrey on just let me get the title again. It's supporting well-being in 2025 in our children and ourselves, and so it's a very timely topic. There, and that's the April 30th, Bell Centre, 7 to 9, and tickets are bought through the Bell Centre.
This is such a delight because, Gordon, I know you speak around the world, and you were just talking about being in like the Balkan Islands,
the Balkan countries tours. Yes, that was a great tour.
But I mean,
between Italy and Greece, that whole area there, which that was my first time visiting there. Yes.
Well, I mean, just to have you speak here in Vancouver, and I will have the link and details about the event on the show notes and talk about it. The very last question to end it off: what are you excited about in this next chapter of fatherhood? I guess grandfatherhood.
Yes, grandfatherhood. Well, fatherhood never ends, because if you're the father your children need, it sure takes a lot of weight off of their own partnerships, and that is really needed these days, because we're so isolated from our villages of support. And when we don't have those villages of support, there's so much pressure that couples are everything to each other, and that was never meant to be, that we were meant to be everything to each other. So today's couples carry a load, and when they have children without that supporting cast, that also is quite a load. What am I looking forward to? A little bit more time to write.
Yeah.
I've got lots of books in me. Unfortunately, only one has been published. I'm a really slow writer. I went into science because I wanted to avoid writing.
Me too.
And then I really had something I wanted to write about, and that's where Gabor Mate came in, because he was taking my courses and he was starting to write up some of the material. And then our wives got us together and said, I think you may need each other. And so that was a great partnership. But he had lots of books inside of him as well. But yes, I do want to write, and I'm looking forward to that, and having more time actually. We're having an 8th grandchild on the way. Oh, wow. And so hoping to really put my how do you say it? Practice what I preach. Yes, to be able to live it out loud.
Well, I could already envision it, and it's your writings are fantastic. The book that I didn't realize was written 20 years ago and rewritten, I guess, last year, the revised edition.
Yes,
it rings so true, and I mean, happy to keep you accountable to the extent I can, or like collab on something. But this is truly fantastic, and thank you for joining me on 2001 Car for your first car podcast.
Thanks for the ride. Thanks for the opportunity. This was very unusual, and yes, it is quite amazing. It's actually a lot easier. I was just saying to Stephen before, is this the magic for males? When they don't need to look at each other when they talk, if they're just looking at something else or concentrating, then it's a lot easier to share. But yes, it was. I enjoyed it. Thank you for this opportunity to share some of these reflections on parenting, fathering, grandfathering.
Fantastic. We'll do a debrief after we close it out, but thanks again. All right, my friends, that is a wrap. What an episode. I can't believe I had Gordon sitting next to me, the author of Hold On to Your Kids. That was a masterclass, truly a masterclass. You could hear and feel me smiling from left and right. So many analogies. I have so many takeaways. and especially this concept of attachment-based parenting, because we think about the parent-child relationship, but instead it's really more the child to parent. How do we ensure that bond with our children and start from that aspect in terms of how we navigate through? And so I'm so grateful for Gordon for sharing his thoughts, sharing his principles, to have someone of his caliber sitting next to us. He speaks around the world and he just happens to be in Vancouver during this week, and we had him on the show to talk about parenting. So I hope you all had fantastic takeaways. I know I did, and I'm going to re-listen to this episode over and over again. I'm just outside of his place, just dropped him off, but I just want to captivate my excitement. And for those who listened right before his talk in end of April, check it out. We'll have it in the show notes. And with that, thank you. Thank you all for listening in. Thank you for following us on Spotify, Apple Podcasts, on YouTube. Give me a follow on LinkedIn. I actually love to chat with you one-on-one there and just to get to know you. We're on this rocket ship, and I'm so grateful to have your support to be able to bring in guests like Gordon. And so with that, I'm going to drive back home to pick up my daughter because she's probably missing me. I hope she is. All right, with that, take care. All the best. Chat soon. Cheers. Bye.